So let's get started with that UI then. And for that, in that lib folder, I'll add a new folder called widgets. And you don't have to do that, of course, but I will add it here to keep my files, my source code files organized and make it clear that everything in there will be a widget, whereas in models I have my model classes and so on. And in that widgets folder, I'll therefore add a new file called grocery_list.dart because this app is about outputting some grocery items. Now, of course, it's very possible that you chose different file names and also different widget names or a different widget structure. And that's, of course, all fine because ultimately this was meant as a challenge and as an exercise opportunity for you. But here I'll work with that widgets folder and the grocery list.dart file. And in that grocery list.dart file, I now want to add a new widget class. And I'll name it grocery list because, well, that's what this widget will be about. And to make it a widget class, we of course have to extend something, as you learned. And here I'll extend a stateless widget because whilst we will actually change this later, at the moment for just outputting these dummy items, we don't need a stateful widget here. Instead, a stateless widget is all we need to use. And we should import this from material Dart. And with that added, we can and should add our build method. And of course, also this constructor. And here I'll add my grocery list constructor like this and only accept and forward that key because we don't need anything else here in this widget. And now with that done, here in the build method, I of course want to build that list user interface. Now for this, I'll first of all start with a scaffold widget to make sure that we have this basic screen setup, because otherwise we would have this black background and would have almost no styling. So I add my scaffold here, and in there I'll actually set up an app bar with the built-in app bar widget, as we did it many times before in this course, simply so that in there I can set my title to your groceries, like this. And of course, title should be a text widget instead of a string. So we set it up like this and can turn this into a const widget. So that's the app bar. Now for the body, I want to output that list. And this list could potentially become very long. Now, of course, not with the dummy groceries I have here. There I only have 3 items. So if we only ever had those 3 items, it would of course be absolutely fine to output that list with the column widget, for example, or with the list view without using its builder mode. But the idea with this app here, of course, is that ultimately we will be able to add more grocery items to it, and therefore this list could become very long, and we could have dozens or hundreds of items on that list potentially. And therefore you learned that it is preferable to build such lists with list view and there with its builder constructor function, because this will then build the list in an optimized way and make sure that we only display and render the items that are actually visible or about to be visible. So here I'm using this list view builder widget. And with that added here, we then have to add our builder function here, which is a function that takes some context as an input and then the index of the list item that is currently being built. And these argument values will be passed in automatically by Flutter, as you learned. Here we then just have to return the widget that should be used for every row. And here you could, for example, use the row widget or anything like that, but I will actually go for the list tile widget here, since this comes with some built-in list optimized styling, which makes our life a bit easier when it comes to building this list here. So I add this list tile here, and now with that added, in that list tile widget, I, for example, want to set the title. And the title should be set to the title of the grocery item, or to the name of the grocery item, to be precise. So therefore, to output that name here as a title, I have to get access to my different grocery items, so to the dummy items at the moment. Well, and to do that, we should simply add an import to this dummy items.dart file in this file here by importing our own package, which in my case is called shopping list, and then from there the data folder, and then there the dummy items.dart file. And with this import added here, we can then go down here and use our grocery items list to access an item by index, and to then access its different properties like name. Though, of course, title actually does not want a string, but a widget. So here I'll build a text widget with that name. But that's now my title. Of course, we also have to make sure that Flutter really goes through all our grocery items, and that's why besides adding item builder to this builder constructor function, we should also add item count, and this should then be set to grocery items dot length, like this, so that Flutter knows how often it has to call this builder method potentially. Now, besides setting the title, I also want to add the leading parameter here to this list tile to output a little indicator for the category this grocery item belongs to. And here it's important to keep in mind that all these categories have colors attached to them. So in the end, it's this color which I want to output here. And for outputting such a colored block, which in the end is the goal here, you have different options. And I'll simply go for the container widget here, because this container widget allows me to set a width. In this case, I'll go for 24 pixels, and a height, also 24. And then a background color of this widget block I'm rendering here. And here I'm simply rendering a square with a certain color. And the color here, of course, will also be grocery items index to reach out to the item we're currently rendering, dot category to get its category, and then every category object has this color property. So that's what we need to use here now. On this category, we access color to set the color of this block. Well, and last but not least, here I'll add the trailing parameter to this list tile, because there I want to output the quantity with the text widget, and then again by reaching out to the grocery item by index, and then there we have quantity. Now text, as you learned, of course wants a string, not an integer, and we can easily convert this to a string by calling toString here. And that's now my finished list with its list items. Of course, we could also outsource this list tile here into a separate standalone widget. Here I'll keep it all in one widget though. But with that added, we should be able to now use this grocery list as a widget here in the main.dart file as a value for home. So that's what I'll do here, grocery list. And we also must add an import here to package shopping list widgets grocery list.dart. We can then also add const down there. And with all that, we can run this app here, and we should then be able to see this basic grocery list UI on our emulator. Here we go, that's looking good to me. And with that added, we can next work on this new item feature, which allows us to add new items to the list. And we will of course add that feature by using this Flutter Forms feature I mentioned earlier. As a side note, you find a link to my finished project at this point of time attached to this lecture, so that you can, for example, compare your grocery list widget to mine, and also simply copy and use my code so that you can follow along with exactly the same code as I have it here at this point in the section.